Two things got me into politics. Firstly, I was studying psychology as an undergrad, and I was doing a paper on self-actualization, and it was focused on Pierre Trudeau. It was 1980, and he had just come back from the dead. He had quit, and then Joe Clark's government fell, and this is a history lesson. And I was doing this paper on self-actualization. That was my exposure to politics through the federal government. And then I was writing the paper, and a buddy of mine came into my room and said, "Let's go up to the campus. Tommy Douglas is there." And I go, "Who's Tommy Douglas?" And they explained to me that he was this iconic figure that created public health care in Saskatchewan that became part of our public health care system in Canada. So I went out to the campus, and this little tiny man, he couldn't be more than 5'2", 5'3", and was getting smaller. He was in his 80s at that point. Powerful voice and a captivating speaker. And it wasn't just the tone and the cadence, it was the message, and I was smitten. And the next year I transferred into politics, political science and history, and I studied the League for Social Reconstruction and the creation of the CCF and the NDP, and how Canada had responded to the Depression and the war and the transformation of Canada after the war. And then I was on my way to do a master's degree in studying history. Fast forward to my first job, coming back to Canada. I studied in Australia, and I got a job on Parliament Hill opening the mail because I couldn't find anything else to do. I went to Ottawa because I've got an MA in history, there's museums, there's the archives, it seemed the right place to be, and I got a job opening the mail. I met Ed Broadbent, and the next thing I know, I'm working on election campaigns, and Mike Harcourt's government was formed in BC. I came back home and worked in government, and then got out of government after the NDP was defeated, watching television, and a guy named David Hahn was announcing that the BC Ferries was going to build ferries in Germany. So I started yelling at my television set, as I'm prone to do. And my son was in a garage band, and the drummer, 15-year-old kid, came into the living room and said, "What are you doing? You're yelling at the TV set." And I said, "Oh, these stupid liberals, they're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars somewhere else." And he said, "What are you going to do about it?" So there I am, a parent. My kid's buddy puts me on the spot. So I said, "I'm going to run for office, and you're going to help me." So he did. His name's John C. Russell, and he helped me knock on doors and pass out pamphlets, and 12 years later, here I am. Completely distorts our democracy. When the public has the perception that the Premier of BC is only focusing on the people that write checks for her, then they start losing interest in the political process. I think we need to inspire people to get involved, and you don't do that with the cynicism that comes from companies, large companies, giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to a political party. And the Premier getting $300,000 in additional salary because she's a good fundraiser. I think it distorts our politics. I've tabled legislation personally 3 times, and as a party we've done it 6 times to get big money out. We ban big money, all of a sudden people are back in the center of our politics where they belong.
And it creates more level playing field.
Exactly. And it also, I mean, the Liberals will outspend us 5-1 in the coming election campaign. And it curtails our ability to speak directly to British Columbians because we have to save our resources to use during the election campaign. Well, the Liberals have been spending money for a year and a half, demonizing me and the NDP. They've got third-party interests, corporate interests that are also running attack ads. And then there's the $20 million in public money that the Liberals are spending promoting the achievements, so-called achievements of the government. That distorts our politics. I believe that if we get big money out and we have citizens directing our political parties, we'll have more reasonable campaigns that are focused on talking about ideas and the things that matter to people rather than making sure that the wealthy are taken care of. That's what we get with big money today. First of all, it's great news that the BC Teachers Federation endured, even though many of the so-called experts suggested that they should stop with their legal action and just get back to doing what they were told. Thank goodness. They said, "No, thank you very much. We live in a democracy. We have the right of law, the rule of law, and we're going to follow this to the end." And in doing so, repudiated 13 years of BC Liberal policies. And that's good for citizens, it's good for kids, and it's good for our public education system. Now, where do we go from there? I have to say that I'm not confident that Christy Clark, the architect of the contract stripping as the Minister of Education will follow through as we're coming up to an election. We'll follow through on the court-ordered restoration of the language in the contracts. I believe a better course of action for voters and those who are passionate about public education would be to vote for a government that's been talking about these issues for the past 10 years in a positive way rather than pretending that everything is fine. We need to fix the funding formula in British Columbia. It is not working for small districts, it's not working for growing districts, and it is also making education tougher for kids and tougher for teachers. That's bad. I'm an energy geek. I'm very passionate about energy, and it drives our economy, it drives our lives. We are all absolutely dependent on the energy that we use in our communities, in our homes, and in our country. But I believe that the technologies of today are just the tip of the iceberg of the transformation we're going to need to make if we're going to adapt to the climate change environment that we all know is upon us. And Power BC is a plan that I put forward as a response to the Liberal suggestion that building another dam, a long, long way away from where the population lives, made sense. Instead, I suggested that we start investing in new technologies. In my community on Vancouver Island, in the First Nation, the Souk First Nation, have put photovoltaic solar panels on all of the common buildings on reserve. And now they're selling power back to BC Hydro. They're meeting all of their domestic needs and at peak times of the day can sell back to the grid. And that's in a rainforest. And that's 8-year-old technology. When I talked to the chief about what he and the community could do today, with the cost of technology dropping by 80%, he gets a big smile on his face and says, the sky, literally, is the limit. There are technologies now with wind, solar, geothermal, and a host of other opportunities that will create more jobs in more parts of BC than we'll get from mega projects like Christy Clark's proposing. Well, I grew up in poverty, and my mom ended up getting a union job. She was a CUPE member, and because she had benefits, I was able to get a better life than my older brothers and sister did after my dad passed away. So I have a real understanding of what it means to be in a single-parent family, and it's shaped my life for the better. I have a much better understanding of the challenges that people face when they have hardship or they have tragedy affect them. And I believe in a civil society, a caring society like we have here in Canada and in British Columbia. Helping people when they need it allows them to realize their full potential. And the fact that we have so many children, among the highest child poverty rates in the country, when we have so much abundance here and there's so much affluence and wealth around us, to have the abject poverty that we do have is just not acceptable. And I believe that most British Columbians feel that way. And given the opportunity to help those who need help, most people say, yeah, let's do that. In my world, that's the function of government, to lift up everyone's boat, to equalize as much as we possibly can. And the best equalizer is public education. If we give young people the tools to succeed, it's limitless, the possibilities that open up for them. I believe that most British Columbians will support that, and that's why I'm going to run on a campaign that says we can do better than we're doing now. This is not as good as it gets. We should all aspire and hope every day for a better BC, and I think that is what I want to bring forward. I'm going to be holding the Liberals accountable for the poverty that we live in today, but I also want to make sure that people understand that together, working cooperatively, we can make a better world for everybody, and I think that's what people get up every day to try and do. I do anyway. Wow. Well, for me, it was catching crabs in the Souk Basin as a kid. My first exposure, again, we didn't have a lot, so our camping trips were confined to driving out from Victoria to Souk and playing around in the water and then coming back home again. So going to the Souk potholes was one of my favorite places in the world to go swimming in the river. And my first discovery of turning over a rock and seeing crabs scurry away. That's my fondest memory of growing up on the coast and on Vancouver Island, was exploring tidal pools and just watching the crabs run as quickly as they can and shaking them off my finger when the pinchers grabbed onto them. Later on, as I grew older, going to Saratoga Beach and Miracle Beach and actually catching big crabs and eating them was also quite rewarding as well. But as a kid, I remember most vividly the number of crabs you would find if you turned over that perfect rock in a tidal pool. Well, first of all, a $1 billion tax break for the richest people in British Columbia would be something I would be addressing early on in my mandate. And it's also about choices. Government is always about choices. Every time a finance minister in any province or any jurisdiction with a parliamentary democracy stands up, they say these are the choices that this government is making. Christy Clark's been making choices for the wealthy and the well-connected. She's been making choices for those who write the checks for her political party. I want to make choices for people. I want to make sure that working people have some confidence that the government that they elect is spending every minute of every day focused on making life more affordable and better for them and their families. Enormous challenge, and again, it's an energy geek question to the energy geek. We have serious problems at BC Hydro, and the BC Liberals have been ignoring them for certainly the past 10 years. Gordon Campbell put us on a trajectory with his unfunded liabilities or contractual obligations for private power at a time when the cost of energy was going down. The advent of natural gas in almost every corner of North America means that the cost of electricity has been flat for a decade. And while the prices haven't been going up, demand has also been going down. We used to sell electricity to the United States. They no longer want our electricity. And now we're building, spending another $9 or $10 or $11 billion to bring on more energy in a marketplace that's awash in power. This is a big problem. The Liberals aren't talking about it. We need to have more of a discussion about this. And the first order of business, as my mom taught me, if you're in a hole, stop digging.